So, hi guys, I'm Senon, and this is Accessibility and Design, or better known as Who Can Actually Use My Application. There are going to be quite a few references to web design during this talk, just because that's what I'm familiar with. Web design, everyone's favorite part of software. So, you might be thinking, what? Just click the thing. It's not hard to use a computer. And yeah, that's mostly true for most people. But some people just can't navigate every application, right? So people with vision deficiencies, such as blindness and color blindness, or auditory problems, or dyslexia, or physical disabilities that prevent them from using a traditional mouse and keyboard the way most people would. These things can all limit a person's ability to use an application. So if we start off with color blindness, according to Wikipedia, between 8% of males and 0%, well, around 8% of males and 0.5% of females of Northern European descent are red-green colorblind. And that's quite a lot. So you probably know someone who's colorblind. They might not know they're colorblind until quite late on in life, as happens with some people. I'm colorblind, and I thought I was just really bad at art as a child, but not only am I bad at art, but I'm also colorblind. So it's a little bit inconvenient, and it's part of the reason why I have an interest in making applications accessible. So the way to test for color blindness is called an Ishihara test. It's all those dots in a big circle. You might have seen them. So here are two I pulled off the internet. The one on the left is just some numbers, apparently, and then the one on the right, I think, has some text, or so I've been told. That's just the way it is. But to me, they're just dots on a screen. Like, someone left their 5-year-old out with a bucket of paint. Okay, actual blindness. So there are over 50,000 blind people in Ireland, and it's not like these people just don't use computers, right? It's impossible to go about your life without using a computer, especially considering, you can't even go shopping nowadays really without going on the internet. So, pretty essential to use a computer. So the next question is, how do these people use a computer, right? And most people use a screen reader. So on Windows, there's a screen reader built in by default. I think the key, the shortcut is Windows key, Control and Enter. And it's actually surprisingly good. It takes some getting used to though, because you're not navigating based on what you're seeing, but what you're hearing. So it's a bit new. And it lets you do pretty much everything quite well. It is a bit slower. So, that's just the way it is. But if you're on Windows, I'd recommend giving it a shot. It can help, it can give you a feel of how blind people see and interact with software and a computer. And, if you're on Linux, I suppose you can just build one yourself. But yeah. Deafness. So quite a number of people are deaf. That doesn't just mean, completely deaf, but also some hearing loss. About 17% of the Irish population has some form of hearing loss, which is quite a lot when you think about it. And you might think it's just all old people with their hearing aids and their ear trumpets and whatever. But about a third of the people suffering from hearing loss are under the age of 60. And, you might still say that that's still a bit old, but, it's not just old people. It's kind of bad to rank disabilities, but as far as using a computer, hearing loss is not as bad as vision loss, because we don't generally use an application just using our ears. That's, It's not by design, but by coincidence, because, you know, screens came around first and now everyone uses a screen. So we just assume people can't listen to audio everywhere. The exception here is in video games and films and videos. And so, you know, if you're playing something like Resident Evil or watching the latest Hot Linus Tech Tips video, you'll generally want the audio for that, right? And audio is quite important there. Right, reading disorders. So, yeah, the long and short is, you know, reading disorders are a thing. People can have trouble reading text that is like this. I probably should have picked a different font, something more squiggly. But yeah, just don't do this. Don't have big walls of text. It's ugly for people that aren't dyslexic, and it's really bad for people that actually are dyslexic. Yeah, there is a cool website that I wanted to demo. One second. Can you see this? Awesome. Yeah, so this is just some dude on GitHub had this demo where the characters in the words are just shuffled randomly. Yeah, this might not be the best example. It might be a bit excessive, but it's still interesting to see. All right. Okay. Moving on to physical disabilities. You know, some people can't rely on a mouse and keyboard, and or, you know, can only use one or the other. Usually it's a case of, you know, they can't use a mouse, so they use the keyboard to navigate a computer. And sometimes people use special controllers like this Microsoft Gamepad thingy that was all the rage. I don't know, like 2 years ago or something when it came out. Kind of lost track of time, but it gives people a way to interact with a computer that they might not have had otherwise, and it can help them use a computer when, you know, before they might not really be able to. And, you know, the point being is just it's important to be cognizant that not everyone will interact with a computer in the same way that you do. Right. So if this would move on, that's, oh, okay, we skipped one slide. Right, what to do? With color blindness, you know, the most important thing is to use a clear color palette. That doesn't mean that it's see-through. That means that the colors are easily distinguishable and, you know, can be seen by as many people as possible, right? There are lots of websites that can help you with this. I know both Google with their material design and Microsoft with whatever they call their design have websites that'll help you generate a color palette that is accessible and hopefully pretty. Yeah, and you want to look out for contrast. So white text on a light background is bad because, you know, it's very hard to see. And yeah, also, you know, you can find someone who's colorblind and ask them to look at it. And if they say, yeah, that's cool, I like this big blank section over here, you should probably change it up because they're probably seeing something totally different to what you're seeing. And, you know, it's not ideal. So another thing you don't want to do is what Marv did with their logo. this this is not good, right? Don't do this. Because when I was in the cinema watching Kingsman for the first time, I saw all these dots fall into place. And I was like, oh, cool. A big box full of dots. That's neat. And, not only is it bad if people don't know what your company is, but, it's not a good look. All right. Blindness. So regular blindness. When you're building a web page, support the ARIA tags. They're for screen readers, and they're super important. They provide a description that the screen reader can play back to the user and tell them what they're looking at, right? So when you use a web page, a lot of the time a button is just an icon, right? And if a screen reader just sees an icon, it can tell the user arrow pointing left, size small, right? But that's not useful because that doesn't tell the user what it's actually supposed to do. But if the ARIA tag says, open menu X, right? Then the screen reader tells the user that, and then the user knows that they can now look at a menu. And a lot more useful than some random jargon that developers think is cool. So you have to, or well, you don't have to, but you should allow your website to be navigable with only a keyboard. Now that means structure your website clearly. So the way a screen reader reads a page is in the same way the HTML is laid out. So if you have, random sections on your web page laid out in different chunks, and you're using CSS to just move things around, that's bad because the screen reader won't have a clue what's going on, and it'll, it might start with the menu button in the top left, and then, drop down to the footer, and the only thing that the blind person can do is contact you for help because that's the only part of the website they can navigate to, and that's not ideal. Also, the way most web forms can be navigated by pressing tab, that's a really important feature. So, if you're writing some, custom HTML and CSS and whatever, just make sure you're not doing anything too hacky, because if you do something too hacky, then your website will, kind of be broken for people that can't use a mouse, and that's not ideal. Add alternative text to images. If the image doesn't load, it's neat to tell the user what it is. If the image does load and the person happens to be blind, they can't tell the difference. So it's good to have a description of what's in the image. Like if you're comparing two t-shirts on a page, and you have a stripy t-shirt and a not stripy t-shirt, just a screen reader telling a person that shirt.jpg is better than shirt.jpg or shirt2.jpg, it doesn't tell them much, right? So you have to think about what this person can't see, and that doesn't mean write essays on the beauty and serenity of the natural landscape in the background of this photo of a car or something, right? That's not interesting. But quick one-sentence description of what the image is will usually go a long way. Yeah, test it out for yourself. The screen reader that I mentioned earlier in Windows is super cool. So just give it a shot. Try to use the computer without or just using the screen reader, and see what it's like. because it's kind of hard and most of the web sucks. So, the best way to get a feel for how your website looks to a blind person is to try it yourself. And if you can't navigate it, then you can't expect anyone else to do it. All right. Deafness. Pretty standard stuff. Support subtitles and captions. That's grand. Everyone's favorite video streaming site, YouTube, has auto-generated captions, which are fantastic if you're hard of hearing or can't listen or to a video or whatever. It's really great to have the captions there as an option. And if you're making a game, for example, try to avoid a reliance on sound. Obviously for atmosphere and stuff, it is very important. But if your game is something more relaxed, like Minecraft, you can add these little these captions here that tells you, a skeleton is shaking his bones on your left, and a zombie is groaning in the corner. So, useful things to tell someone that they might not be able to hear otherwise. And I know it's extra work, and computer scientists are notoriously lazy. We didn't choose this career to work hard, or well, sort of work hard, but where possible, not work hard. And yes, this is extra work, but it does really go a long way. Right. So what was actually important out of what I've been saying for the past going on 20 minutes? Lots of people have issues. And that doesn't mean your friend who goes out and gets plastered right before the exam and hasn't studied, that's a different kind of issue. But there are lots of people who experience things differently to how most people experience them. Design with clarity and redundancy. So, lots of a clear color palette, and if possible, have captions for videos and images and descriptions, so that if a person can't experience one particular form of what you're showing them, maybe they can experience another. Colors are hard, and people see colors differently, so it's important to make sure that everyone can see what you want to show them. Like Marv, except they didn't quite think that through. Yeah, and the most important part, test, right? Try things out for yourself. Experience it. If you haven't navigated a web page with just a keyboard, then give it a shot. If you're working on something and you notice something that you think could be better, then change it, right? There's nothing wrong with making mistakes, as long as you do your best to fix them. Like, everyone's written some horrendous code. Everyone's written something that barely just functions and only on my machine, right? But if you improve over time, right? If you improve your code over time, maybe add, a couple of captions here, or some tags, or clean up all of the CSS that has been burning a hole in your heart for so long, and you properly structure your application, then it can really improve the experience for lots of people, and not just the people that you had in mind when you originally designed it. All right, questions?
Is there a way to test this screen reader thing on Linux?
I don't know.
You're asking a future Microsoft employee Obviously, his answer is going to be biased, so just keep that in mind.
I think Chrome and Firefox both have something built in by default. So you can do that for the web-based stuff. I don't know if Linux has something built in by default. If anything, it would be under like accessibility. But yeah, don't know. Sorry.
Well, a quick package search tells me there's something called Speak Up as a screen reader.
Nice.
There's also was it Fenrir for screen reading the TTY, which is pretty neat. BRB. So what I've got from this talk is I should change my terminal background to a green and my foreground text color to red, right? Because those are two very easy to distinguish colors.
Yes, exactly. And also it has extra privacy benefits because 1 in 10 people won't know what's on your screen.
Eventually become blind if you stare at it long enough.
Also, it helps to make it out of circles.
Yes. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. I hope you learned something useful. Even if it was just that Windows good.